The 2024 Italian Grand Prix was held successfully at Monza last week, with a victory for the home team Ferrari. Charles Leclerc didn't possess the fastest car, but the clever strategy from Ferrari engineers and the mistakes made by McLaren's as a team opened the door for him to clinch a victory here. Throughout the weekend, a clear decline of Red Bull challengers was observed, which has put Verstappen and his team at risk of failing to defend the championship. Welcome back to Total F1. This is our race report of the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. We have a lot of interesting things to discuss about this race weekend, but before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. Instead of George Russell, Mercedes decided to field Kimi Antonelli, who is going to be the replacement of Lewis Hamilton next year. However, he experienced a crash after sliding his rear at the final corner, which ended his appearance in FP1 earlier than expected. Another new face in FP1 was Franco Colapinto, who joined the Williams team as a replacement of Logan Sargent for the rest of the season. However, he also experienced a journey through the gravel trap in the final moments of the session. Both the Ferrari drivers had to deal with gravel traps after failing to control the speed of their cars at the fast corners of Monza. Verstappen was the fastest driver of the session, with a lap time of 1 minute 21.676 seconds. Leclerc and Norris were the second and third fastest drivers respectively. Kevin Magnussen made many mistakes since the start of the session and finally found a barrier at turn 7 after experiencing a heavy spin over the gravel. A number of drivers made many minor mistakes while adjusting to this newly resurfaced Monza circuit. This time, Lewis Hamilton was the driver to top the timesheet with a lap time of 1 minute 20.738 seconds. Norris and Sainz were the second and third fastest drivers of this session. Once again, Lewis Hamilton gave hope to the Mercedes fans in this session, topping the timesheet with a lap time of 1 minute 20.117 seconds. Most notably, his teammate Russell was the second fastest driver of the session, and the Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc occupied the third spot of the timesheet. Despite having 2 dry practice sessions to understand the track conditions, a number of drivers made minor mistakes throughout the session. Most notably, drivers like Russell, Colapinto, Piastri and Verstappen dipped their wheels on gravel after exceeding the track limits at turn 7. The qualifying session started with a near collision incident between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri after the McLaren driver joined the pit lane in an unsafe manner. Franco Colapinto, who was participating in his first ever Formula 1 qualifying session, put his 2 wheels on gravel, destroying his best attempt in Q1. But he was lucky to manage the situation and rejoined the qualifying, recording the 18th fastest lap of the session. Nico Hülkenberg also drove into the gravel, entirely destroying his flying lap, and a yellow flag was shown for a brief time period. However, he was able to seal a position in Q2 with his next attempt. Ricciardo sealed his position in Q2 by beating the lap time of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda in his final attempt of Q1. Tsunoda, Stroll, Colapinto, Bottas and Zhou were the drivers eliminated at the end of Q1. Drivers of the top 4 teams spread their domination in Q2, reserving the spots in the next part of qualifying very easily. Albon and Hülkenberg are the other drivers to reserve the remaining 2 spots in Q3. That means Alonso, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Gasly and Ocon are the drivers who were disqualified at the end of Q2. Q3 was a competitive one, as drivers from all 4 top teams were fighting for the pole position of the race. However, McLaren drivers clearly possessed a slight pace advantage over the drivers of the other 3 teams to be the most possible contenders for the pole position of Monza. Verstappen tried hard to complete a fast lap with the intention of improving his position in the standings, but his best attempt was good enough to be only the 7th fastest in the session. None of the drivers from the rival teams were able to pose a serious threat on the lap time set by the 2 McLaren drivers, and they were able to lock up the front row of the starting grid in papaya colours. Most notably, Lando Norris was able to seal the pole position in back-to-back races, clearly evidencing the strength of the current McLaren package. Norris, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc and Sainz occupied the top 5 spots of the starting grid. 2 former champions, Hamilton and Verstappen, were the 6th and 7th spots of the starting grid. The 3 last spots of the Q3 standings were occupied by Perez, Albon and Hülkenberg respectively. These qualifying performances clearly evidenced how serious the decline of the Red Bull F1 team is. Despite his poor start in Zandvoort a week ago, Lando Norris was successful in converting his pole position advantage to a race lead this time in Monza. His teammate, Piastri, was closely chasing him, posing a real threat on his track position. After enjoying a great start to the race, Russell put his wheels on grass at the first corner, experiencing a slight drift. The only option for him to remain in the race was to take the escape road. After rejoining the race, he had to slow his car down a little bit to hand over track position back to the drivers who were running ahead of him. This resulted in dropping him down to the 7th spot. Meanwhile, Piastri made a successful outside move against his teammate Lando Norris after moving side by side for a brief moment. To avoid any collision, Norris had to slow down his car, and this created the opportunity for Leclerc to overtake the former race leader into the 2nd spot. This was a huge blow to the game plan of the McLaren driver, as Norris was the driver who had the highest chance to challenge Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. McLaren engineers didn't make any comment on this move, and it's a really surprising strategy from the Woking-based team. Meanwhile, Hülkenberg and Ricciardo made some contact, pushing Hülkenberg off the road, but both were lucky to continue the race without experiencing any damage. Ricciardo was handed a 5-second penalty for forcing the Haas driver out of the track. Then on lap 5, Hülkenberg made direct contact with Tsunoda at turn 1, pushing him completely off the track. George Russell, who dropped down the order within the first few seconds of the race, lost 1 more position to Sergio Perez on the 11th lap. Meanwhile, Magnussen, who was involved in a wheel-to-wheel battle with Ricciardo, successfully completed his overtake on the same lap. On lap 15, McLaren engineers made a sudden call on Norris for a pit lane visit to take a new set of hards. He made contact with a pit lane marker while entering, but managed to complete it within 2.2 seconds. However, this strategy paid off, as he was able to occupy the net 2nd place in the race. In the next lap, Leclerc and Hamilton also made their pit stops. Magnussen experienced a lockup and made direct contact with Gasly, pushing him off the road on the 18th lap at the first chicane. Race control handed over a 10-second time penalty to Magnussen for causing that contact. Gasly suddenly took the escape road and rejoined the race. On the 31st lap, Russell tried to overtake Perez by going around him at the first corner, but he failed to complete that move successfully as he went off the road. So, the Mercedes driver had to hand over that position back to Perez immediately. Russell attempted to attack Perez a few more times within the same lap, but nothing was successful. Meanwhile, Lando Norris failed to reduce his speed properly when approaching the 2nd chicane and decided to take the escape road as a safety measure. Then, in the subsequent lap, he decided to make his final pit stop, earlier than any other driver in the race. After trying hard several times, Russell made a successful overtake against Perez on the 38th lap, but Perez joined the battle again with the intention of taking back his position. After moving side by side for a considerable time period, Russell cleanly made his move to the 8th spot. The race leader, Piastri, made a 2nd pit stop on lap 39, experiencing a slight delay in releasing his car back to the pit lane. This helped Leclerc take the race lead, and this strategy was heavily criticised by pundits, as McLaren engineers called him to the pits when he had no extra pressure while leading the race. Norris, who was running in 5th after his 2nd pit stop, made a successful overtake against Verstappen on the 41st lap, and this move clearly evidenced that Red Bull challengers no longer possessed the superpower that it had in the early part of the season. On the 45th lap, Oscar Piastri chased down Carlos Sainz, improving his track position up to 2nd, and his target was to take the race lead within the next 8 laps. 3 laps later, Carlos Sainz was beaten further by Lando Norris with a DRS-assisted move. With these 2 moves from the McLaren drivers, Ferrari had to give up on the hopes of completing their home Grand Prix with a double podium finish. Even though Piastri tried his best, Leclerc maintained an untouchable lead over the McLaren driver within the last few laps and completed the 2024 Italian Grand Prix as the winner. Behind him, Piastri and Norris completed the race as podium finishers. Sainz had to be satisfied with a 4th place finish after occupying the 2nd spot in the race at one moment. And behind them, Lewis Hamilton crossed the line as 5th. This race hurt the championship plan of the Red Bull F1 team, as Max Verstappen had to be satisfied with a 6th place finish, only showing 1 place improvement throughout the race. The rest of the point-offering spots of the race were occupied by Russell, Perez, Albon and Magnussen. The race clearly exposed the weakness of the Red Bull Challenger, and we can expect more surprises within the remaining 8 races. Ferrari's sudden improvement will surely affect the current dynamics of the championship battle, and it wouldn't be an easy task for Verstappen and his Red Bull team to defend their title this season. Verstappen is still leading the championship with 308 points. Lando Norris has been able to reduce his gap with the Red Bull driver down to 62 points. If McLaren had a good game plan before this race, Norris would have had a good chance of completing this race with a victory, reducing this gap by a few more points. But possibly most notably, Red Bull will surely lose its top spot of the constructors' standings at the end of the next race, as McLaren needs only 8 points to overtake them. What do you think about the outcome of the 2024 Italian Grand Prix? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting Formula 1 news. We'll see you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.